Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sea Slumber. Tonight, we slip beneath warm, sunlit water into a world so layered and alive that it seems, at first, like something imagined rather than real. There are places on this planet where color itself appears to have taken up residence, where towers and archways and branching structures rise from the seafloor in shapes that no architect planned, no engineer designed, no single mind conceived. These places have been growing, slowly and without interruption, for longer than most of the things we call ancient. They shelter more species than almost any other environment on Earth. They are visible from space, and they were built, grain by grain, by animals smaller than your fingernail. This is the quiet impossibility at the heart of a coral reef. Not a pile of rock, not a garden exactly, though it has that quality of abundance. Something closer to a city, one that grew without intention through countless small acts, repeated across centuries and millennia, until it became one of the most intricate things alive. Tonight, we will move through that world slowly. We will come to understand how something so vast can begin so small. We will drift through the layered lives that make a reef their home, through the partnerships and rhythms and ancient patience that hold it all together. And somewhere along the way, I hope the reef will do what it always seems to do to those who look at it carefully: leave you quieter than you arrived. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, let your shoulders settle. Let whatever you've been carrying today grow a little lighter. Take one slow breath and then another, and feel yourself beginning to sink. Gently, the way warm water receives you without effort. We are drifting down into something luminous and unhurried. Let's begin. The reef can look at first like solid ground beneath the water, and yet almost everything about it begins in softness. Not stone, not structure. Something far more improbable. A small, translucent animal, open at one end, anchored at the other, waiting in the current for whatever the water carries past. This is a coral polyp. It has no skeleton of its own, no shell, no armor. It is closer in form to a sea anemone than to anything we might call a builder. And yet, over time, it makes limestone. It pulls calcium and carbonate from the surrounding seawater and secretes a hard cup beneath itself, a foundation it will never leave, and a surface its descendants will build upon for centuries after it is gone. That is worth staying with for a moment. The animal is soft. The structure it creates is stone. These two facts seem to contradict each other, and yet the contradiction is the whole story of the reef. A coral polyp is small. Most are only a few millimeters across. Some species form polyps no larger than a pinhead. They live in colonies, thousands or millions of individuals sharing a common skeleton, their bodies connected through a thin sheet of living tissue that spreads across the surface of the structure beneath them. When you look at a coral head, that branching or boulder-like shape, you are looking at the accumulated calcium carbonate secreted by all the polyps that have ever lived there, layer upon layer, compressed and cemented by time into something that feels, when you touch it, like rough rock. It is rock, in a sense, or very close to it. The mineral is aragonite, a form of calcium carbonate that the polyps precipitate from seawater in a process that is quiet, continuous, and almost unimaginably slow. A massive coral head, the kind that looks like a small boulder on the seafloor, may have taken 500 years to reach that size. Some of the largest coral structures on Earth are older than most nations. They were growing when the first European ships crossed the Atlantic, and they have not stopped since. What this means is that a reef is not a place that was built and then left standing. It is a place that is constantly being built right now by living animals, in the same way and by the same means as it has always been built. The oldest stone at the base of a reef and the newest calcium carbonate deposited this morning are part of one unbroken act. But the polyp alone cannot explain the reef. Something else is required, something hidden inside the tissue of the coral itself, zooxanthellae. The word is difficult, and the organism is invisible to the naked eye, but its role is central to almost everything the reef becomes. These are microscopic algae, single-celled photosynthetic organisms that live within the cells of coral tissue in numbers that can reach millions per square centimeter. They are not parasites. They are partners in the deepest sense, so embedded in the life of the coral that the two cannot easily be separated. The algae photosynthesize. They use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars, and they share a significant portion of those sugars with the coral. In return, the coral provides the algae with shelter, protection, and access to the nutrients the coral produces through its own digestion. It is a mutual arrangement, ancient and precise, and it drives almost everything remarkable about a reef. What this partnership produces is energy, far more energy than the coral could gather through feeding alone. The polyp does feed. It extends tentacles at night to capture tiny plankton drifting through the water. But this hunting accounts for only a fraction of what the animal needs. Most of the coral's energy budget, sometimes as much as 90%, comes from the algae living inside it. The reef, in other words, is solar-powered. It runs on light, filtered through seawater, captured by microscopic organisms no larger than a single cell, and passed upward through a soft animal body into the slow construction of stone. This is why reefs need clear water. This is why they need shallow depths. This is why they cluster in warm tropical shallows rather than spreading across the deep ocean floor. The algae need light the way a plant needs light, urgently, constantly, and the coral needs the algae. So the reef follows the sunlight, growing upward and outward along the margins, where warm, clear water catches the most of it. Light is not just a backdrop to the reef. It is a building material. The growth is slow in ways that are difficult to hold in mind. Different coral species grow at very different rates. Branching corals, the kind that spread in thin, finger-like formations, can grow several inches per year under ideal conditions. Massive corals, the great rounded heads that look like boulders, may grow only half an inch per year or less. The largest coral structures on Earth accumulated their size not through speed, but through patience, through survival, through the quiet, unceasing deposition of mineral year after year across stretches of time that make human history feel brief. Imagine a coral colony that began growing before the invention of the printing press. It has survived storms that swept across it, warm years that stressed it, cold years that slowed it. It has watched the water around it change in small ways and large. And it is still adding to itself today, still secreting new calcium carbonate at its surface, still hosting the algae in its tissue, still feeding at night on whatever the current carries past. It has no awareness of its own age. It simply continues. That continuity is part of what makes a reef feel, when you encounter one, like something that has always been there. Because in human terms, it very nearly has. When a coral polyp dies, its soft tissue disappears, consumed by bacteria, absorbed by the water. But the calcium carbonate cup it secreted remains. The skeleton persists. New polyps settle on top of it, begin their own secretion, add their own layer. Over time, the dead skeletons of past generations become the foundation for living ones. The living coral is only the outermost surface of a structure that extends downward through time, through layer after layer of compressed skeleton, reaching depths that represent centuries of accumulated life. This is what a reef is at its core. It is a record, a physical record of every animal that lived and secreted and died in this place, going back further than any individual can trace. The living reef sits on top of its own history, like a city built over the ruins of the city that came before it. Except that in a reef, the ruins are not abandoned. They are load-bearing. They are the reason the city can keep growing upward. There is something almost geological about this. And in fact, reef limestone is geological. Ancient reef structures from hundreds of millions of years ago now appear as exposed rock formations on dry land, cliff faces and hillsides that were once living ecosystems beneath warm prehistoric seas. The reef does not just record time. Given enough of it, the reef becomes landscape. The colors that make a reef so immediately striking come in large part from the zooxanthellae. The algae contain pigments, golden brown, amber, rust, that give many coral species their characteristic warm tones. Other colors come from the coral's own pigments, which may serve as a kind of biological sunscreen, filtering out ultraviolet radiation before it can damage the tissue below. What this means is that the reef's extraordinary visual quality, the thing that draws the eye, that makes photographs of reefs look almost artificial in their richness, is not decoration. It is function. Color in a coral reef is almost always doing something. It is protection, or partnership, or signal, or consequence of a metabolic process that has been running for hundreds of millions of years. The reef does not try to be beautiful. It simply is as a result of everything it is doing. There is one more piece of this picture worth holding quietly. The calcium carbonate that coral polyps extract from seawater does not appear there by accident. It arrives through the movement of the ocean, through the chemistry of water that has absorbed minerals from rivers and seafloors, and the slow dissolution of ancient rock. The sea carries the building material. The coral uses it. The reef rises. In this sense, the reef is made of the ocean itself, not just shaped by it, not just dependent on it, but literally constructed from the dissolved minerals that seawater carries. The water and the reef are not separate things. The reef is what happens when certain animals intercept certain chemistry in certain light and hold it still long enough to become stone. That process has been running with only brief interruptions for roughly 500 million years. Long before fish, long before flowering plants, long before most of the animal groups we recognize today, reef-building organisms were pulling calcium from ancient seas and making structures. The basic partnership between coral-like animals and photosynthetic algae is one of the oldest arrangements in the history of complex life. We look at a coral reef and see color and movement and life in astonishing variety. All of that is real. But beneath it, holding it up, older than almost anything else we can point to, there is a soft animal and sunlight and the slow, patient chemistry of stone. That is where all of it begins. And in a sense, that is where it always is. Still beginning, still adding the next thin layer, still reaching toward the light. And once you know what a reef is made of, another surprise appears. This abundance can exist only in a very particular kind of water, not just ocean water, a specific temperature, a specific clarity, a specific depth, a specific distance from the equator. A reef is not simply where coral happens to be. It is where an extraordinary number of conditions have agreed, all at once, to make coral possible. Change any one of them far enough, and the reef does not struggle. It simply does not exist. That is worth sitting with for a moment. One of the most complex ecosystems on Earth, more species per square kilometer than almost anywhere else on the planet, lives inside a window so narrow that a few degrees of temperature, a small increase in sediment, a slight deepening of water can close it entirely. The richness is real, but so is the precision required to sustain it. Start with temperature, because temperature is where the window is most clearly drawn. Most coral reefs grow in water between roughly 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. That is a range of 10 degrees across, which the most productive reef building can occur. But the range that any particular reef can actually tolerate is much smaller than that. Coral polyps and their symbiotic algae, the zooxanthellae that live in their tissue, have evolved together in stable tropical conditions. They have not evolved for flexibility. They have evolved for a specific and relatively unchanging warmth. When water temperature rises even 2 degrees above a reef's normal range, the relationship begins to break down. The zooxanthellae, which are photosynthetic and produce the energy that sustains the coral, become stressed at higher temperatures. They begin producing compounds that are harmful to the coral tissue. The coral, in response, expels them. What remains is the coral's pale limestone skeleton, visible through translucent tissue that is no longer colored by its algal partner. This is coral bleaching. The coral is not dead, but it has lost its primary source of energy. It is weakened, and if the warmth persists long enough, it will not recover. That is why temperature matters so precisely. The partnership that builds the reef is a close one, and close partnerships are often fragile ones. The zooxanthellae cannot simply tolerate any condition. Neither can the coral. They found each other in warm, stable, tropical shallows, and that is where the arrangement continues to hold. Depth follows naturally from temperature and from something else, light. Zooxanthellae are photosynthetic organisms. They require sunlight, not indirect light, not filtered light from great depth, but the direct, strong, warm light of shallow tropical water. Most reef-building corals are found in water shallower than 30 meters. Many of the most productive and structurally complex reefs exist in the top 10 to 20 meters of the ocean, where light penetrates fully and photosynthesis can proceed at its most efficient. Below 30 meters, the light begins to thin. Some coral species have adapted to lower light conditions, growing in flatter, plate-like forms that maximize the surface area exposed to whatever light reaches them. Spreading wide rather than branching upward, reaching for what is available. But these deeper communities are less dense, less diverse, and structurally simpler. They are the edge of the window, not its center. What this means for the distribution of reefs across the globe is striking. Reefs are not spread evenly through the world's tropical oceans. They are concentrated in a band roughly between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south of the equator, where sunlight is most direct and most consistent throughout the year. Outside that band, the angle of the sun shifts enough, the water cools enough, the light thins enough, that reef-building corals cannot sustain themselves. The tropics are not just where reefs happen to be found. The tropics are the only place where the light is right. Then there is water clarity, which is its own kind of requirement. Sunlight can only travel through water if the water is clear enough to let it pass. Sediment, suspended particles, algae blooms, and the runoff from rivers and land all reduce clarity. They scatter and absorb light before it can reach the depths where corals grow. This is why most thriving reefs are found far from river mouths and coastlines, where heavy sediment flows into the sea. The water near rivers is often turbid, carrying soil from inland regions, and the turbidity is enough to prevent reef growth. Clarity and nutrient levels are connected in a counterintuitive way. Nutrient-rich water supports abundant plankton, which can cloud the water and block light. It also encourages the growth of algae on coral surfaces, which can smother and outcompete the corals themselves. Reefs, paradoxically, tend to flourish in nutrient-poor water. Water that appears blue and empty and almost sterile to the eye. The abundance of the reef is not fed by the richness of the surrounding water. It is generated internally through the efficiency of the coral-algae partnership and the tight recycling of nutrients within the reef community itself. This is one of the more quietly astonishing facts about coral reefs. They are oases of life in what is, by most measures, a biological desert. The tropical ocean surrounding them is warm and clear precisely because it holds so little of the dissolved nutrients that drive plankton growth elsewhere. The reef does not depend on an abundant surrounding sea. It creates its own abundance inside itself. The clear, nutrient-poor water that looks like it should support very little is, in fact, one of the conditions that makes the reef's impossible richness possible. Salinity is another constraint, though a quieter one. Ocean salinity is relatively stable across most of the open sea, maintained by the slow global circulation of seawater and the balance between evaporation and precipitation. Coral reefs are adapted to that stable range. Freshwater incursions, from heavy rainfall, flooding, or the proximity of rivers, can dilute surface water enough to stress or kill coral polyps. Equally, in very enclosed or shallow areas where evaporation is high, salinity can rise above the range corals can tolerate. This means that reefs tend to avoid certain coastlines even within the tropics. Estuaries, where rivers meet the sea, are generally hostile to reef building. So are enclosed lagoons in very arid regions where evaporation is intense. The salinity constraint is less dramatic than temperature or light, but it is part of the same picture. A narrow range of conditions, all of which must hold simultaneously. Wave energy and substrate are part of the window too, though they work differently. Corals need a firm surface to settle on. Larvae, drifting through the water column, can only attach and survive if they find solid rock, existing reef structure, or another hard material to anchor to. soft sediment, sand, mud, the loose material of the seafloor, does not hold them. A sandy seafloor in warm, clear tropical water is still not a place where a reef will grow. The foundation has to be there. Wave energy shapes where within a reef corals can thrive. Some species are adapted for high-energy zones facing open ocean, where surge and current are constant. They grow in dense, rounded, massive forms that resist breakage. Others prefer the calmer waters of lagoon sides and sheltered bays, where branching and plate-like forms are stable. Within a single reef, wave energy creates different neighborhoods, different conditions, different species, different architecture, all existing within the same narrow band of overall requirements. Put all of this together, and the picture becomes clear. A reef requires warm water, but not too warm. Clear water, but not nutrient-rich. Shallow water, but not so shallow that it is disturbed by breaking surf or exposed at low tide. Salt water, but not too salty, not too fresh. A firm substrate to anchor to. Consistent sunlight for most of the year. And all of these conditions must be present simultaneously, sustained across decades and centuries, for a reef to grow into the structures we recognize. The wonder here is not that reefs are fragile. The wonder is that they exist at all. Each condition taken alone is not rare. Warm tropical water exists across vast stretches of ocean. Clear water exists. Shallow sea floor exists. Sunlight at low latitudes is abundant. But the overlap, the place where all of these conditions arrive together and hold steady, is genuinely narrow. It is a sliver of ocean space, a band of tropical shallows, a set of physical agreements that must remain in place for the reef to persist. And yet, within that sliver, life has built some of the most complex and densely inhabited environments in the history of the planet. That contrast between the strictness of the conditions and the extravagance of the result is the thing worth dwelling on. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is true. The reef does not flourish despite its constraints. In some sense, the constraints created it. The clear water that limits nutrients forced the coral algae partnership to become extraordinarily efficient. The warmth that limits temperature range created the stability that allowed complex community structures to develop over long spans of time. The shallowness that limits depth brought the sunlight that powers everything. The window is narrow, but inside it, the reef found a way to become one of the richest places on Earth. There is a stillness in this, if you let it settle. A reef does not announce its requirements. It does not signal when conditions are drifting toward the edge. It simply grows when the window is open and stops when it closes. Slowly, year by year, layer by layer, it accumulates in the places where the water and the light and the chemistry have agreed to hold still long enough. Where they hold, the reef grows toward the surface, reaching for the light that sustains it, building stone from water, adding millimeters to what will eventually become meters, then tens of meters, then the great limestone foundations that underlie entire island chains. The window is narrow. The patience required to fill it is immense. And somehow, quietly, over time, the reef does both, lives within the narrow band and builds something vast. The water must be just right, and if it is, the reef begins to do something even stranger still. It starts to hold time in its shape, not metaphorically, in stone. In accumulated calcium carbonate laid down across centuries, the reef records where sea level once stood, where an island once rose, where the ocean floor slowly descended. It is a living archive. And to understand what that means, it helps to understand that reefs do not come in only one form. They grow in patterns determined not just by chemistry and light, but by the slow movement of the earth beneath them. The simplest reef is called a fringing reef. It grows close to shore, in the shallows just off a coastline or island, reaching outward from the land into the sea. This is the reef in its most direct relationship with solid ground, dependent on the slope of the seafloor, the depth of the water, the angle at which the land meets the ocean. Fringing reefs are common. They ring many tropical islands, hugging the coastline like a living border. They are where the reef story begins, in the shallow, sunlit margin between land and open ocean. But sometimes there is a gap. Between the reef and the island, a lagoon appears. The reef has pulled back, or the island has risen, or the water between them has deepened into something calmer and more enclosed. This is a barrier reef. It stands offshore, separated from the land by water that is often still and sheltered. The reef forms a long wall, a barrier, as the name suggests, between the open ocean beyond and the quieter lagoon within. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest of these. It stretches more than 2,000 kilometers along the northeastern coast of Australia. That is a distance comparable to the length of the continental United States' eastern seaboard. It is not a single continuous wall of coral, but a system of nearly 3,000 individual reefs and 900 islands assembled across the continental shelf in a pattern that took tens of thousands of years to reach its current form. It is, by most measures, the largest living structure on Earth. And it is visible from space. That detail tends to stop people. A structure built by animals no larger than a fingernail, visible from orbit. Each polyp adding its microscopic contribution to a skeleton, each skeleton accumulating into a colony, each colony adding to a reef, each reef part of a system spanning 2,000 kilometers of coastline. The scale is not achieved quickly. It is achieved patiently, incrementally, across so much time that the word patience begins to lose meaning and becomes something closer to geological inevitability. The wonder of barrier reefs is partly their size. But there is something else, something harder to hold in the mind. They are not just large, they are accurate. The shape of a barrier reef records the shape of the coastline it grew beside, the depth of the water between them, the history of sea levels rising and falling across thousands of years. Drill into the limestone foundation of a barrier reef, and you find layers, older coral, ancient growth, compressed history, each layer a chapter in the story of the ocean's relationship with the land. This is not a metaphor. Scientists read these layers the way others read tree rings or ice cores. Each band of limestone carries information: the temperature of the water when it formed, the chemistry of the ocean at that time, the rate of growth, the pauses. A coral core extracted from a reef can reveal centuries of environmental history with a resolution of months. The reef is not just a habitat, it is a record. It has been quietly taking notes on the ocean for as long as it has been alive. And then there are atolls. An atoll is a reef that has outlasted the island it grew around. It is what remains after the land beneath a fringing reef has sunk back into the sea, leaving only the ring of coral that once marked its edge. The island disappears. The reef remains, a circle or near circle of coral enclosing a lagoon where solid ground once stood. Charles Darwin proposed the mechanism for atoll formation in 1842, decades before the technology existed to confirm it. He reasoned from first principles and observation that fringing reefs must become barrier reefs as islands slowly sink, and barrier reefs must become atolls as the islands disappear entirely. He suggested that the coral grows upward as the land descends, maintaining its position in the sunlit shallows by rising to meet the surface. The island vanishes. The reef stays. A lagoon fills the space where mountains once were. It took more than a century for deep drilling to confirm this. When scientists finally drilled down through the limestone of a Pacific atoll, they found volcanic rock far beneath the coral, the sunken remnant of the island that started everything. Darwin had been right. The atoll is a reef that climbed toward the light for long enough that the land beneath it ceased to matter. There is something almost patient in that image. The island rises from the ocean, volcanic and new. Coral colonizes its edges. The island begins to sink as oceanic islands do, drawn slowly downward by the cooling and contracting of the crust beneath. The coral grows upward, matching the descent year by year, millimeter by millimeter. The island sinks further. The coral rises. And eventually, all that remains above the water is the ring, the outline of something that was once a mountain, now expressed only in the shape of a living reef. The Pacific Ocean contains hundreds of atolls. The Maldives, the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, the Tuamotu Archipelago, entire nations whose territory consists almost entirely of reef-derived land, low and flat and encircling calm lagoons. Some of these atolls are so low that their highest point is only a few meters above sea level. The reef is what they stand on. The reef is what they are. This is worth sitting with. Human communities built on the record of geological time. Entire cultures established on coral that was once a fringing reef around a volcanic island that has since sunk beneath the ocean. The island is gone. The reef remembers it. And the reef, in its patient upward growth, created the only land that remains. Reefs also record sea level. During ice ages, when large quantities of water were locked into glaciers and ice sheets, sea level dropped significantly, by more than 100 meters in some periods. Reefs that had grown in shallow water were suddenly exposed to air, killed by the exposure. When the ice melted and sea level rose again, new coral colonized the old limestone foundations. The reef grew again on top of what had died, continuing the record from where it had stopped. The Great Barrier Reef, as it exists today, began growing on an older foundation approximately 10,000 years ago, after the last glacial period ended and sea levels rose to something close to their current position. 10,000 years is a long time by human reckoning. By reef reckoning, it is a relatively recent beginning. The limestone shelf beneath it is far older, the accumulated product of reefs that lived and died through multiple glacial cycles, building up and being buried, building up again. A reef, in this light, is not just one thing. It is a succession of living systems, each growing on the ruins of the one before, each recording a different chapter of the ocean's history in the only language available to it, stone. The vastness of reef systems is genuinely difficult to hold in the mind. The Coral Triangle, a region spanning parts of Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste, contains the highest coral diversity on Earth, covering roughly 6 million square kilometers of ocean. It is sometimes called the Amazon of the sea. But unlike a forest, which spreads across a surface, a reef is three-dimensional. It rises from the seafloor toward the light, creating vertical habitat that adds depth to the horizontal expanse. The Great Barrier Reef alone contains more than 400 species of coral. It shelters roughly 1,500 species of fish. It is home to thousands of species of mollusks, echinoderms, crustaceans, worms, and other invertebrates. The number of individual organisms living within it at any given moment is beyond meaningful estimation. And all of this complexity, this density, this interlocking life rests on a foundation of accumulated skeletons, built upward over thousands of years by animals that each contributed less than a grain of rice to the whole. Scale built from smallness, permanence built from fragility. The reef does not achieve its vastness by producing large things. It achieves it by producing small things, uncountable numbers of them, across enormous spans of time. There is a specific quality to the time a reef operates in. It is not human time. It is not even the time of a forest or a mountain. It is something in between, faster than geology, slower than ecology. A coral colony grows at a pace that makes watching paint dry seem eventful. And yet, in 10,000 years, that pace produces something visible from space. What makes this particular kind of patience remarkable is that it is not passive. The reef is not simply sitting still and accumulating. It is alive, actively, at every moment. Coral polyps are feeding, dividing, competing, dying, being replaced. Algae are photosynthesizing. Fish are grazing and spawning and sheltering. The reef is in constant motion, constant metabolic activity, constant ecological negotiation. And yet the net result of all this living over long enough time is something that reads like stillness, something that reads like stone. It is the same thing the previous section arrived at from a different direction. The reef lives within narrow conditions and builds something vast. Here, the addition is temporal. The reef lives within a narrow band of time, each polyp alive for years, perhaps decades, and builds something that lasts for millennia. Individual lives, brief and small, contributing to an architecture that will outlast everything that built it. There is a stillness that comes from thinking about this, not the stillness of emptiness, the stillness of something very large moving very slowly. The atoll, that was once a mountain. The barrier reef that records sea level across glacial cycles. The limestone core that holds centuries of ocean temperature in its bands. The reef that grew upward while the island beneath it sank, patient enough to outlast the land. The reef does not know it is doing this. It has no awareness of the record it is keeping, no understanding of the scale it is achieving. It grows because growth is what it does. Each polyp builds its small cup of stone because that is the nature of the animal. And the cups accumulate, and the centuries accumulate. And somewhere in that accumulation, a shape emerges. The shape of time, held in coral, visible from the edge of space. It grows, it records, it waits in the way that only stone can wait, which is to say, without waiting at all. Simply remaining, simply holding the shape of everything that made it. stone and sunlight make the stage, but the reef becomes fully itself only when its residents begin to move through it. And they are always moving. That is perhaps the first thing to understand about a reef, as a place to live rather than a place to look at. It is not a garden where things grow quietly and stay where they are. It is closer to a city at midday, layered, crowded, full of small, urgent business that never fully stops. Fish pass through narrow corridors of branching coral. Crabs edge sideways along the base of a sea fan. A sea urchin moves, slowly and with great deliberateness, into the shadow of an overhang. Somewhere above them, a school of small fish turns in unison for no visible reason, flashing silver, then disappearing into blue. The reef is doing this constantly, in every direction, at every depth where light still reaches. What makes this remarkable is that none of it is coordinated. There is no center. No signal goes out in the morning telling the reef to begin. The activity simply is. Thousands of animals following their own particular needs, their own particular schedules, in such close proximity that their lives become tangled together in ways that look, from a distance, like choreography. It is not choreography. It is something more interesting than that. It is what happens when many different kinds of life occupy the same limited space and learn over millions of years how to fit. The reef's architecture creates the conditions for this density. Earlier sections described how coral builds its structure. The limestone cups, the accumulated colonies, the branching and plating forms that grow over centuries. What that structure does for the animals living in it is provide an almost impossible variety of habitat within a very small area. A single coral head the size of a dining table might contain dozens of crevices, overhangs, tunnels, and sheltered hollows, each one slightly different in depth, current exposure, light level, and temperature. Each one, therefore, slightly different in who finds it useful. This is why reef fish diversity is so staggering. Not because the reef is large, though some reefs are vast, but because the reef offers so many different kinds of small places to be. A species that needs a particular depth of crevice to shelter in at night will find that crevice. A species that feeds on the algae growing on exposed flat surfaces will find those surfaces. A species that picks parasites from the skin of larger fish needs a location where larger fish will come and hold still. The reef provides all of this simultaneously in layers. And so the reef fills up niche by niche until the available space is occupied so thoroughly that it becomes difficult to look in any direction without seeing something alive. Biologists estimate that coral reefs, though they cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, support roughly a quarter of all marine species. That figure is worth sitting with for a moment. 1% of the floor, a quarter of the species. The reef is not just dense. It is dense in a way that challenges the usual relationship between area and diversity. It suggests that what matters is not how much space there is, but how many different kinds of space there are within it. The fish are the most visible layer of this density, and they are worth following for a while. A reef at midday is thick with them, hovering in schools above the coral, threading through gaps in the structure, resting motionless in shadow, or moving with slow purpose across open sandy patches between coral heads. Different species occupy different positions in the water column with a consistency that begins to feel almost like assigned seating. Surgeonfish and parrotfish work the bottom, grazing. Damselfish hover close to their particular patch of coral, defending it with a vigor that seems disproportionate to their size. Fusiliers school in loose, open water just above the reef, turning and glinting. Larger predators, groupers, snappers, hold position in shadows or move in slow patrols, watching. The parrotfish deserve particular attention. They graze on algae, but they do it in a way that has consequences far beyond their own meal. Their teeth, fused into a beak-like structure, scrape directly against coral rock to get at the algae growing on and within it. The sound of a parrotfish feeding is audible underwater, a soft, repeated crunching, like someone slowly eating something hard. What the parrotfish cannot digest, it excretes as fine white sand. A single large parrotfish can produce hundreds of pounds of sand per year in this way. The white sandy beaches of tropical islands, the pale sandy floors of reef lagoons, a substantial portion of that sand passed through a parrotfish at some point. The reef is being slowly consumed and slowly rebuilt, and the parrotfish is part of that cycle in a way that is easy to overlook when you are simply watching it eat. The surgeonfish graze differently, softer algae on open surfaces, moving in loose groups, covering ground. Where parrotfish crunch, surgeonfish sweep. Where parrotfish leave bare scraped rock, surgeonfish leave surfaces slightly cleaner. Both are doing something the reef needs. Algae, left unchecked, would smother coral. The grazers are a kind of maintenance crew, keeping surfaces open, keeping light reaching the coral's symbiotic algae, keeping the balance between coral and the things that would otherwise outcompete it. Below the fish, in the crevices and beneath the rubble, and along the base of coral structures, another world operates at a slower pace. Crustaceans are everywhere on a reef, though they are not always easy to see. Crabs tuck themselves into gaps that seem too small for them. Mantis shrimp, animals with eyes that perceive wavelengths of light invisible to humans and appendages that strike with the speed and force of a small explosion, occupy burrows in the sand and rubble. Cleaner shrimp wait at particular locations, antennae extended, advertising their services to fish that will come to be groomed. The mantis shrimp is one of those animals that rewards slow attention. It does not behave the way most crustaceans do, skittering sideways, retreating from disturbance. A mantis shrimp often holds its ground and watches. Its eyes move independently, scanning in different directions simultaneously. It has the quality of an animal that is genuinely looking at things, assessing them, deciding. Whether that impression reflects something real about its cognition is a question that remains open. What is certain is that it is a highly effective predator, a fierce territorial defender, and a presence on the reef that other animals seem to register and give space to. It occupies its burrow the way a very confident resident occupies a particular corner of a neighborhood. Other animals know the corner belongs to it. Mollusks add another layer. Cowries move at night across open rock, grazing. Cone snails, beautiful and extremely venomous, hunt slowly in sand and rubble. Giant clams, in the Indo-Pacific, sit wedged into crevices, their mantles exposed in colors that shift between blue and green and brown, their tissue dense with the same symbiotic algae that live inside coral. The giant clam is photosynthesizing, in its way, drawing sunlight down into its flesh, It is another version of the same partnership that built the reef. Light captured by something living inside something larger, both of them benefiting from the arrangement. The echinoderms move through all of this with their own unhurried logic. Sea urchins graze on algae, their spines providing protection from most predators and their tube feet, allowing them to move across nearly any surface. Crown-of-thorns starfish, large, many-armed, covered in venomous spines, feed directly on coral tissue, leaving bare white skeleton behind them as they move. They are part of the reef's ecology in the same complicated way that fire is part of a forest's ecology. Destructive in the short term, potentially useful in the long term when populations are in balance. Catastrophic when populations surge beyond what the reef can absorb. Sea cucumbers move across sandy floors, processing sediment, turning it over, extracting organic material. They are unhurried in a way that seems almost geological. They are doing something necessary, quietly, at the pace they have always done it. What is striking about all of this, when you hold it together in mind, is how much of the reef's daily activity is maintenance. The grazers keeping surfaces clear, the sediment processors turning the substrate, the predators regulating the populations of prey species, the cleaners removing parasites. The reef is not just a place where animals live, it is a place where animals, by living, do the work that keeps the place livable. The maintenance is distributed across thousands of species, each one doing a small part without any awareness of the larger system it is sustaining. This is the reef's most fundamental organizing principle. Not hierarchy, not command, not any single keystone species doing everything alone. Though some species matter more than others, and their absence is felt. What sustains the reef is participation. Many kinds of animals doing many different kinds of things in the same place, at the same time, most of them simply following their own needs. And the system holding together because those needs happen to complement one another in enough ways and have been shaped by enough time to produce something that functions. By mid-afternoon, the light on the reef has shifted. The angle is lower, the shadows longer, the colors slightly warmer. The activity does not slow exactly, but something about the quality of the movement changes. Schools of fish reposition themselves. Certain species that were active in the morning begin drifting toward shelter. Others that were resting begin to stir. The reef is not a single ecosystem with one daily rhythm. It is many overlapping rhythms, each species on its own schedule, and the transitions between those schedules happen gradually, continuously, so that the reef never quite reaches a moment of stillness between them. This is what it means to be a neighborhood, rather than a spectacle. A spectacle has a peak moment and a quiet afterward. A neighborhood is simply always doing something because its residents are always doing something, and they do not all do the same things at the same time. The reef is alive in this distributed, overlapping way, not building toward anything, not winding down from anything, simply continuing. The crab in its crevice, the parrotfish crunching across the bottom, the damselfish defending its patch with small, furious darts, the sea cucumber moving almost imperceptibly across the sand, all of them present, all of them engaged in the particular business of being alive, all of them part of the same place without knowing that they are. There is a quietness to thinking about this. Not the quietness of absence, but the quietness of sufficiency. The reef does not need a narrator. It does not need to be observed to be doing what it does. It was doing this before anyone looked at it, and it will continue in the places it still thrives, whether anyone is watching or not. The crab moves sideways into shadow. The school turns once more in the light. The reef continues. And within all that motion, some of the reef's most important work happens not through force, but through cooperation. There are places on the reef where larger fish stop swimming and wait. They arrive from open water, from the edges of the reef, from deeper channels, and they slow themselves deliberately, hovering in place near a particular coral head or a particular patch of rock. Their mouths open. Their gill covers spread. They hold still in a way that fish rarely hold still, and they wait. What they are waiting for is small enough to overlook. The cleaner wrasse is a slender fish, only a few centimeters long, dressed in a stripe of vivid blue-black running the length of its pale body. It does not hide. It does not retreat when larger animals approach. Instead, it moves toward them, inspecting their scales, their fins, the soft tissue inside their mouths and along their gills, removing parasites, dead skin, and small wounds that would otherwise fester. It is a service. And the larger fish, groupers, moray eels, surgeonfish, animals that would consume a small fish without much consideration in other circumstances, allow it to happen. They hold still and they wait, and the wrasse moves across them without being harmed. This is one of the reef's most studied relationships, and it remains quietly astonishing the more carefully it is examined. What makes it work is not instinct alone, though instinct is part of it. The posture of a fish presenting itself for cleaning is distinct and recognizable, a kind of stillness that signals intent. The wrasse reads that signal and responds to it. The larger fish reads the wrasse's approach and permits it. Neither is simply reacting. Both are, in some functional sense, behaving in ways calibrated to the presence of the other. The relationship has a grammar to it, a set of understood positions and movements that both parties follow. And when one of them deviates, when a wrasse occasionally takes a small bite of mucus rather than a parasite, a kind of opportunistic cheat, the client fish often flinches or leaves or shakes its body in a gesture that functions unmistakably like complaint. The wrasse, researchers have found, tends to behave better when other fish are watching. The reputation of a cleaning station matters. That is a strange and slow thing to sit with. That a fish weighing a few grams appears to modulate its behavior based on something like social consequence. Cleaning stations are not random points on the reef. They are consistent locations. The same patch of coral, the same overhang, the same cluster of sea fans, visited repeatedly by the same wrasse and by the same client fish returning across days and weeks. Larger fish have been documented traveling considerable distances to reach a specific station rather than a closer one. There is preference involved. There is, in some sense, loyalty, not in the emotional register that word usually carries, but in the behavioral one. A pattern of return, a recognized place, a relationship that persists over time because it continues to be useful to both sides. The reef is full of arrangements like this, each one slightly different in its particulars, each one doing quiet work that keeps the system functioning. Consider the anemone and the clownfish. The anemone's tentacles carry stinging cells, nematocysts, that fire on contact, paralyzing the small animals that brush against them. The clownfish lives among those tentacles. It moves through them constantly, rests against them, shelters within them, and is not harmed. The clownfish is not immune by accident. It develops a protective layer of mucus through careful, gradual contact with the anemone, acclimating slowly until the tentacles no longer fire in response to its touch. This process takes time. The fish earns its shelter. What the anemone receives in return is less easy to measure, but appears to be real. Clownfish are aggressive defenders of their host anemone, driving away butterfly fish that would otherwise feed on the anemone's tentacles. They fan water across the anemone's surface, improving circulation and oxygenation. Their waste provides nutrients. The anemone that hosts a clownfish appears, in studies, to grow faster and to be healthier than one that does not. Neither animal is thinking about the other's benefit. And yet the arrangement benefits both, and has for long enough that each has shaped the other. The clownfish's mucus chemistry, the anemone's tolerance threshold, both refined over generations of proximity into something that functions like a negotiated peace. What it means, perhaps, is that benefit does not require intention. That partnership can emerge from pure proximity and shared survival pressure, shaped over time into something that looks, from the outside, almost like care. There are shrimp on the reef that do a version of what the cleaner wrasser does. Banded coral shrimp, scarlet cleaner shrimp, several species of Periclymenes, all of them stationing themselves in visible places, waving their antennae, advertising their services in the particular way that cleaners advertise. Fish approach and hold still. The shrimp move across them methodically. The fish depart. The shrimp remain, waiting for the next arrival. They are small enough that a passing grouper could swallow them without noticing. And yet, they are not swallowed. The signal is clear enough and the benefit significant enough that predatory fish suppress the reflex to eat them. There is something in that suppression that is difficult to name without overstating it. A kind of recognition, a category of exception. The reef runs on these exceptions. The gobies and the pistol shrimp share a different kind of arrangement, one organized around different needs. The pistol shrimp digs. It is a capable excavator, maintaining a burrow in the sandy substrate at the reef's edge, clearing debris, extending tunnels, doing the patient structural work of building and maintaining a shelter. But the pistol shrimp has poor eyesight. It is nearly blind in the functional sense, and a blind animal in the open sand is an exposed animal. So the shrimp does not go out alone. It goes out with a goby. The goby stands at the burrow entrance, alert and watching, its eyes scanning constantly for predators. The shrimp keeps one antenna in contact with the goby's body at all times while it works. When the goby's posture changes, a subtle shift that means danger, the shrimp retreats into the burrow instantly and the goby follows. They share the shelter the shrimp built. They share the vigilance the goby provides. The arrangement is so consistent that researchers have found specific goby species associated with specific shrimp species, each pair a long-evolved match, each one diminished without the other. Two animals, one set of complementary needs, a solution that neither could have arrived at alone. And then there is the parrotfish, which is its own kind of relationship, not with another animal, but with the reef itself. The parrotfish grazes on coral, Its teeth, fused into a beak-like structure, are strong enough to bite directly into limestone. It scrapes algae from coral surfaces, and in doing so, it ingests coral skeleton. That skeleton passes through the parrotfish's digestive system and is excreted as fine white sand. The beaches of many tropical islands, the pale, soft sand that people travel across the world to walk on, is, in significant part, parrotfish excrement. A single large parrotfish can produce hundreds of kilograms of sand per year. The white sand is the reef's own body, broken down and redistributed. What the parrotfish does for the reef, beyond producing sand, is graze. Algae competes with coral for space on the reef's hard surfaces. When algae wins that competition, when it covers substrate that coral might otherwise colonize, the reef's capacity to recover from damage is reduced. Parrotfish, along with sea urchins and other grazers, keep algae in check. They are maintenance workers. They move across the reef, leaving it slightly cleaner, slightly more open for coral growth. And they do this simply by feeding, simply by doing what parrotfish do. The reef benefits from their hunger. Their appetite is the reef's housekeeping. That is the pattern running through all of these relationships. None of them are altruistic in the way that word usually implies. The wrasser is not helping the grouper out of goodwill. The clownfish is not protecting the anemone from generosity. The parrotfish is not grazing for the reef's sake. Each animal is following its own needs, its own drives, its own evolutionary inheritance, and the reef is sustained by the overlap. By the fact that enough needs, expressed by enough different animals, happen to produce outcomes that benefit the whole. This is different from saying the reef is designed. It is not designed. It is accumulated. Each relationship is the residue of long selection pressure, of animals that survived better when they cooperated than when they did not, of behaviors that paid off often enough to persist. The cleaning station is not a service industry. It is a pattern that emerged because both parties fared better within it than outside it. The partnership is real. The intent behind it is simply the intent to survive. And yet, something about watching it, the wrasser moving carefully along the gill plate of a fish 10 times its size, the clownfish turning in its anemone, the goby standing watch while its shrimp works beside it. Something about watching it produces a feeling that is hard to reduce to mechanism alone. Not because mechanism is wrong, but because mechanism does not capture how it looks. How it looks is like care. How it looks is like trust. How it looks is like a place where different kinds of lives have found ways to exist alongside one another without erasing one another. The reef has been building these arrangements for a very long time. Longer than there have been words for them. Longer than there have been people to observe them and feel something looking at them. By late afternoon, the cleaning stations are still busy. Fish are still arriving, hovering, departing. The wrasser moves without hurry. The shrimp waves its antenna in the current. The clownfish settles deeper into its anemone as the light shifts toward gold. The reef does not announce any of this. It simply continues doing what it has always done, holding many lives in proximity, finding in that proximity a kind of sufficiency, a kind of quiet order that no single life within it could have made alone. Even cooperation has its own hours, and on a reef, time itself divides the world into different kinds of life. By late afternoon, The gold has already entered the water. The angle of light changes everything. Fish that have been browsing openly through branching coral since morning begin to shift their behavior. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the way that a crowd slowly empties from a square as evening approaches. Something in the quality of the light signals something, and the reef responds. This is one of the less visible truths about coral reefs. They are not one environment. They are two, layered on top of each other in the same water, the same coral, the same square kilometer of ocean, separated not by geography, but by time. The day reef and the night reef share a location without sharing a schedule. What fills the water at noon is largely gone by midnight. What emerges at midnight was largely hidden at noon. The transition between them is one of the quietest transformations in the natural world. The day reef belongs to fish that need eyes and light to do what they do. Parrotfish, wrasser, butterfly fish, surgeonfish, the animals that have been grazing, patrolling, and hovering through the morning hours are built for vision. Their color vision is acute. Their ability to read contrast and movement in lit water is what allows them to find food, read social signals, and navigate the complex three-dimensional architecture of the reef. They are creatures of the bright hours, and they use those hours fully. Through the morning and into midday, the reef at its most active is a place of almost constant movement. Schools of small fish turn through open water above the coral heads. Larger fish move deliberately along the reef's contours, pausing, grazing, continuing. The cleaning stations are busy. The territorial disputes over feeding patches are ongoing. The parrotfish is grinding coral. The surgeonfish is cropping algae from exposed rock. There is no moment of rest in all of this. The energy of the reef in daylight is the energy of a place where every hour of sun is an opportunity that cannot be wasted. That urgency has a reason. Photosynthesis drives much of what happens here. The zooxanthellae inside coral tissue are producing sugars in daylight, and those sugars feed the reef's foundational layer. The algae on open rock surfaces are growing in the light, and that growth feeds the grazers. The visibility that sunlight provides allows predators and prey to read each other at a distance, which shapes the entire behavioral landscape of who moves where and when. The day reef is organized around light the way a city is organized around its roads. Light is the infrastructure. Everything else follows from it. Yet even in the middle of the day, the reef is not entirely what it appears. Tucked into crevices, wedged under ledges, settled into the darker hollows between coral branches, there are animals waiting. Soldierfish, with their large eyes and deep red coloring. Big-eye fish, hovering motionless in shadowed spaces. Squirrelfish, pressed against the underside of a coral head. These animals are present during the day. They simply are not participating in it. They are conserving, resting. Their large eyes, which will be essential later, are already adapted to low light in ways that make bright open water uncomfortable. They are built for different hours, and they know it without knowing it. The shift begins gradually, then all at once. As the sun drops toward the horizon and the light in the water thins from white to amber to something softer, the behavioral signals begin to cascade. Diurnal fish start moving toward shelter. Parrotfish find their preferred sleeping spots, often the same ledge or coral hollow they used the night before. And some begin producing a mucus cocoon around themselves, a translucent envelope that may mask their scent from nighttime predators. Rasa bury themselves in sand, a behavior that looks almost like drowning until you understand what it is. A retreat into safety, a disappearance from the world until morning. The reef's daytime residents are not simply stopping. They are enacting a specific set of behaviors evolved for this transition. Behaviors as deliberate and as ancient as any of the day's feeding routines. The twilight minutes on a reef are a moment of particular ecological tension. Predators that hunt by sight are losing their advantage. Predators that hunt by other means, by lateral line, by electroreception, by smell, by patience in darkness, are gaining theirs. There is a window, brief and precise, when the old guard has retreated and the new guard has not yet fully emerged. Some species exploit this window specifically. Certain jacks and trevally time their hunting runs to this narrow, low-light period, moving fast through water where their prey can no longer see them clearly enough to react in time. The transition is not peaceful for everyone, but it is short. And then the night reef begins. What emerges after dark is not a lesser version of the day reef. It is a different community entirely, operating on different principles. The soldier fish leave their crevices. The squirrel fish move out into open water, which they would never do in daylight. Octopuses that have been wedged into rocky hollows since morning begin to hunt, moving across the reef in slow, deliberate exploration, changing color and texture as they go. Lobsters emerge from beneath ledges and walk the reef bottom with a confidence they cannot afford in daylight. Moray eels, coiled and still through the afternoon, extend into the water and begin following scent trails through the dark. These animals share one significant adaptation: large eyes or sensory systems that do not depend on eyes at all. The soldier fish's eye is disproportionately large for its body, a design that gathers as much available light as possible in conditions where available light is nearly nothing. The moray eel relies less on vision than on an acute sense of smell, and the ability to feel pressure changes in the water. The octopus uses a combination of chemoreception, touch, and eyes that function well in dim conditions. Each of these animals has found a way to be effective in the dark, and the darkness itself is what gives them access to a reef that would be too crowded, too competitive, and too visible during the day. The night reef is quieter in some registers and stranger in others. The constant movement of schooling fish is gone. The open water above the coral is mostly empty, but the surfaces of the reef itself, the ledges, the sandy patches, the spaces between coral branches, are more active than they appear. Things are moving carefully. Things are hunting carefully. The reef at night is not resting. It is simply working in a lower register with different tools toward different ends. And then there is what the coral itself does after dark. Coral polyps spend their days relying on their zooxanthellae, the photosynthetic partners inside their tissue that convert sunlight into energy. During daylight, the polyps are largely passive in their feeding, drawing on what the algae produce. But at night, the relationship shifts. The zooxanthellae are no longer producing. The polyp must feed for itself. After dark, coral polyps extend their tentacles. What looks during the day like a smooth or textured surface of stone becomes, at night, something almost floral. Thousands of tiny tentacles reaching into the water column, each one equipped with stinging cells called nematocysts, each one waiting for something small enough to capture. Zooplankton, which migrate upward from deeper water at night, drift through the reef in quantities that daylight never provides. The corals are ready for them. The polyps catch what they can, digest what they catch, and use those nutrients to supplement what the algae provide. This is one of the reef's quieter revelations. The coral that appears to be simply a substrate, the thing that everything else lives on, is itself an active hunter in the dark. The reef's foundation is not passive. It is feeding. It is participating in its own maintenance in ways that are only visible when the light is gone, and most observers are not present to see them. The reef's architecture is not only grown by sunlight, it is also maintained by darkness. The soundscape shifts with the light, and this is something that takes a moment to understand. A reef in daylight is not quiet. There is the constant grinding of parrotfish. There are the clicks and pops of snapping shrimp, which collectively produce a sound like distant static throughout the reef at all hours. There are the low-frequency sounds that certain fish produce during territorial or courtship behavior. But the soundscape at night is different in texture. The grinding stops when the parrotfish sleep. Some of the higher frequency social sounds diminish. What remains is the shrimp, always the shrimp, and beneath that, a slower, stranger collection of sounds that researchers are still working to fully understand. Low pulses and soft clicks that move through the water in the dark, carrying information whose meaning is not yet entirely clear. What is clear is that the reef communicates across the day-night divide in ways that are not only visual. Sound travels through the reef at all hours. The snapping shrimp are always there, their collective noise so consistent that it becomes a kind of acoustic landmark, a sound that larval fish and invertebrates may use to locate reefs from open water, a sound that says, here is the reef, here is the place to settle. The reef announces itself in the dark with sound when it cannot announce itself with light, and something in the water listens. By the deepest hours of the night, the reef has settled into its nocturnal rhythm. The hunters are out. The sleepers are tucked away. The corals are feeding in the dark. The water above is mostly still, the schools of small fish resting somewhere unseen. There is movement everywhere if you know where to look, but it is slower, more deliberate, organized around different pressures than the day's constant bright urgency. What this means, when you hold it whole, is that a reef is never actually at rest. Not at noon when the parrotfish is grinding. Not at midnight when the octopus is moving across the sand. Not at any hour between. The reef runs continuously on overlapping schedules, with different animals holding different shifts, each one doing its work in the hours that suit its particular design. The same coral branch that sheltered a sleeping wrasser at midnight will be grazed by a surgeonfish by morning. The same sandy patch that a lobster crossed in darkness will be searched by a goatfish at noon. The same water column that was empty of schooling fish at 3 in the morning will be full of them again by 8. Nothing about this is coordinated from above. There is no signal that tells the day crew to go home and the night crew to come out. There is only light and the long history of different animals adapting to different portions of it. And the result, a place that never quite stops, that never runs out of participants, that uses every hour of every day, because there are always animals for whom that particular hour is exactly right. The reef holds all of this in the same water, the same stone, the same slowly growing structure built by small soft bodies over centuries of patient time. It holds the day crowd and the night shift both. It holds them without effort. It has always held them this way. The light continues to fade. The coral tentacles are already out. By now, the reef feels less like a collection of species and more like a way of living together. That is a quiet shift, but it matters. At some point in learning about a reef, the individual facts, the cleaning stations, the borrowed shelter, the fish that graze, and the worms that filter, and the coral that feeds in the dark, stop being separate pieces of information and become something more like a single picture. A picture of a place where an enormous number of different lives have found a way to coexist in the same warm, sunlit water without any of them being in charge of the arrangement. No reef has a center. There is no governing body, no hierarchy that oversees the whole. There is no organ that coordinates the parrotfish and the cleaner wrasser and the coral polyp and the sea cucumber into a functioning system. And yet, the system functions. It has been functioning in various forms for hundreds of millions of years. What does it mean that one of the most intricate environments on Earth has no architect? The question is worth sitting with. We tend to assume that complexity requires direction, that something as layered and interdependent as a reef must be organized from above, or at least from somewhere. But reefs suggest otherwise. Their complexity is not the product of design. It is the product of accumulated relationship. Each species arrived or evolved in place and found its position not by following a plan, but by surviving in proximity to everything else. The result looks planned. It is not. It is something more patient than planning. That patience is worth noticing. The reef did not assemble quickly. It grew through long stretches of adjustment, species by species, relationship by relationship, failure by failure. Animals that could not find a role or could not tolerate their neighbors did not persist in the community. Animals that discovered a way to benefit from proximity or to fill a gap that others left open stayed. Over generations, over many thousands of generations, this sorting process produced the densely interlocked world we now recognize as a reef. Not designed, selected, shaped by what worked over time in the presence of everything else. There is something in that worth thinking about slowly. The reef does not reward sameness. A reef made entirely of parrotfish would not be a reef for long. A reef made entirely of one coral species would be fragile in ways that a varied reef is not. The richness of a reef comes precisely from the differences among its residents. The fact that different animals eat different things, shelter in different places, move at different speeds, and need different conditions to thrive. Diversity here is not decorative. It is structural. The reef holds together because its members are not all the same. That is how the parrotfish and the coral can coexist, even though the parrotfish grazes on coral. Not in spite of the tension, but partly because of it. The grazing removes competing algae. It opens surfaces for new coral settlement. It produces the fine white sand that fills the reef's shallow lagoons. A relationship that looks, from one angle, like consumption turns out to be, from another angle, maintenance. The reef has no word for this. It simply continues. Imagine spending time on a reef without knowing any of its names. No labels for the fish or the coral or the crustaceans. Just the movement, the color, the constant proximity of very different lives. What you would notice, even without language, is how much closeness there is. How many lives are occupying the same small volume of water, the same crevice, the same coral head, and how little of it is conflict. The reef is crowded, and it is largely remarkably quiet in its crowding. That is not innocence. There is predation on a reef. There are territories and competitions and animals that eat other animals without hesitation. But the dominant texture of reef life is not combat. It is negotiation. It is the cleaner wrasser holding its position and the large fish returning to it week after week because the exchange is worth more than the aggression. It is the clownfish and the anemone in their long mutual tolerance. It is the shrimp at the entrance to its burrow and the goby watching the water above, each one extending the other's survival by being present. The reef is full of these arrangements, small, quiet, enduring agreements that no one signed. What makes this strange is that most of these arrangements were not made. They were found. Two species drifted into proximity over evolutionary time and discovered, not consciously, not intentionally, that staying close was better than staying apart. The arrangement persisted because it worked. And because it worked, it became part of what the reef is. The relationship is now as much a part of the reef structure as the limestone beneath it. There is a kind of community in this that does not require understanding. The clownfish does not understand the anemone. The goby does not understand the shrimp. They do not need to. What they have instead is something older than understanding, a fit, the shape of living that accommodates another shape of living, worn smooth over time like stones in a current. And yet, something in us wants to call it belonging. Maybe because belonging, at its quietest, is exactly this: being in a place where your particular way of existing is accommodated by everything around you, where your needs and the needs of your neighbors have become, over time, compatible. A reef does not offer this to every species. Many cannot survive there. The water is too warm, or too shallow, or too competitive, or the particular food they need is not present. The reef is not universal. It is specific. But for the extraordinary number of species that do fit within it, the reef offers something that is genuinely rare in the natural world: density without displacement, proximity without erasure, the possibility of living in close quarters with radically different others and not being diminished by the closeness. The coral polyp does not know this. The surgeon fish does not know this. None of the reef's residents hold the whole picture in mind. They know only their own small portion of it, their territory, their food source, their shelter, their particular arrangement with their particular neighbors. The larger community emerges from all of these small knowings without any one of them being aware of the whole. That is perhaps the deepest thing a reef suggests. That community does not require comprehension. That something vast and intricate and genuinely beautiful can be made by many small lives, each one attending only to what is immediately around it, none of them responsible for the whole, all of them, together, making it. The reef holds this question open. It does not answer it. It simply continues in the warm, clear water, in the slow accumulation of small acts, grazing, filtering, sheltering, feeding, growing, that have been adding up to something remarkable for longer than our species has been here to notice. The light is still fading out there. The coral tentacles are still extended. The night shift is still moving through its hours. And the reef, as always, is simply holding all of it, without effort, without direction, without any single life being responsible for what all of them together have made. It has always been this way. It will continue being this way long after the last observer has drifted off to sleep. And once a reef begins to feel like a community, it is hard not to wonder how long such communities have been teaching that lesson to the sea. The answer is longer than is easy to hold in mind. Coral reefs, in various forms, have existed for roughly 500 million years. Not these reefs, exactly. Not these species, not these shapes, not these particular arrangements of polyp and fish and algae. But reef-building organisms, animals that extracted minerals from seawater, built hard structures, and created habitat for others in the process, have been doing something recognizable as this for 500 million years. The forms have changed. The participants have changed. The oceans themselves have changed. And still, life kept returning to this particular answer. Build something solid in warm, shallow water, invite others in, and let complexity accumulate. That is not a small thing to sit with. 500 million years ago, there were no birds, no mammals, no land plants in the warm form we would recognize. The continents were arranged differently. The atmosphere was different. And yet, somewhere in warm, ancient seas, small, soft animals were building limestone around themselves, dying, leaving their structures behind, and allowing the next generation to build on top of what had been left. The reef-making impulse, in some form, was already underway. What has a reef witnessed then? Not this reef, but the lineage of reefs, the long inheritance of this way of being in the world. It has witnessed, in a sense, the slow migration of life onto land. It has been present, in ancestral form, for the rise of fish with jaws, for the first forests, for the age of reptiles, for the appearance of flowering plants, for the emergence of our own lineage from somewhere in the African interior. None of this was witnessed consciously. Reefs do not observe, but they persisted through all of it, quietly doing what they do. In the warm shallows, through the long turns of geological time. That persistence is its own kind of statement. There have been mass extinctions that devastated reef ecosystems. The worst of them, the end Permian extinction, roughly 250 million years ago, nearly erased reef building entirely. The oceans acidified, warmed, lost oxygen. The animals that had built reefs were largely gone. And for millions of years, the ocean floor where reefs had been was quiet. Almost nothing grew there that could build in the old way. And then, slowly, new organisms evolved that could do something similar. Different animals, different chemistry, different forms. But the same basic answer to the same basic question. How do you build a home in warm, shallow, sunlit water? Life kept asking that question. And life kept arriving at something like a reef. There is something in that which is difficult to name and easy to feel. Not triumph exactly, not reassurance. Something quieter. The sense that certain forms of organization are so useful, so fitted to the conditions of a particular environment, that life will find its way back to them even after catastrophe. That the reef is not an accident of one evolutionary moment, but something more like a recurring answer. a shape that the ocean keeps arriving at, because it works, because it fits, because warm, shallow water and limestone and light and biological complexity have always been, in some deep sense, compatible. Humans have known reefs for as long as humans have lived near tropical coasts, which is to say, for tens of thousands of years. Pacific Island peoples navigated by reefs, rid them, named their features the way others named mountains or rivers. Reefs marked safe passage and danger. They were fishing grounds, building material, sources of food in seasons when other sources were scarce. They were part of the landscape in the most intimate sense, not backdrop, but foreground, not scenery, but home. The knowledge of which reef passages were navigable, in which tides, which corals sheltered, which fish at which times of year was knowledge passed carefully between generations. It was the kind of knowledge that took lifetimes to accumulate and could not be replaced easily once lost. In other parts of the world, reefs entered human imagination differently. To sailors who did not know them, they were sudden danger, ships wrecked on coral in conditions that had seemed clear and safe. The reef that was home to one people was hazard to another who arrived without the accumulated knowledge of its shape. That asymmetry is worth noticing. The same structure, the same limestone towers and shallow passages, meant entirely different things, depending on whether you had grown up reading it or encountered it for the first time in deep water. Reefs also entered human imagination as places of extraordinary beauty. This seems to have been consistent across cultures and across time. The colors, the density of life, the strange architecture of coral. Something about it has always stopped people. Even those who approached reefs warily, as sailors did, left accounts of the color and strangeness of what they glimpsed in the water below them. Even those who dove them for pearls, for food, for sponges, practical purposes, exhausting work, often described what they saw in language that reached for something beyond utility. The reef seemed to ask for a different kind of attention than the world above the surface. There is a reason for that, perhaps. The reef is one of the few places on Earth where biological complexity becomes visible in a way that overwhelms ordinary perception. In a forest, the structure is there, but many of its interactions are hidden, or slow, or too small to see. On a reef, in clear water, with light filtering down through the shallows, you can watch the whole system at once. You can see the parrotfish grazing, the cleaner wrasser working, the surgeonfish schooling, the coral itself, alive, though it does not look it, all at the same moment, all in the same glance. The complexity is immediate. It does not require translation or magnification or long patience. That immediacy is unusual. And it may be part of why reefs have held such a particular place in human imagination, not just as resources or navigational hazards, but as experiences, as places that do something to you when you enter them. What they do, perhaps, is make the ordinary scale of things feel briefly insufficient. On a reef, what is small is not less significant. The tiny cleaning shrimp matters. The microscopic algae inside the coral tissue matters. The invisible lava drifting in the current, finding its settlement site, beginning to build. It matters as much as anything. The reef insists on the significance of the small in a way that is almost disorienting for an animal like us, accustomed to thinking in terms of size and force and visibility. And yet, the reef is also vast. It is ancient, It is made of geological time as much as biological time. The limestone beneath a living reef may have been accumulating for thousands of years. The atoll that now sits low in the Pacific may carry within its stone the memory of a volcanic island that sank beneath the sea long before any human saw it. The reef is a record, a slow, patient record of water temperature and sea level and biological change, written in calcium carbonate, legible if you know how to read it. We are still learning to read it. What we find there is not simple. Reefs have bleached and recovered before, not at the pace of recent decades, but across the long record of their history. They have known warmer water, higher acidity, different conditions. They have adapted slowly in the way that lineages adapt. Not the individual coral, not the individual reef, but the accumulated variation of populations. Across generations, finding new tolerances, new partners, new forms. This is not comfort exactly. It is not meant to be. It is simply the longer view, the view that the reef itself embodies, having persisted through extinctions and recoveries and long silences and slow returns. The reef does not know it has persisted. It does not know anything. But its presence here, in warm, shallow water, 500 million years into the experiment of building limestone in sunlight, is a fact that contains more time than we can easily imagine. And perhaps that is what the reef offers, finally, to human imagination. Not answers, not reassurance, but scale. The sense of having encountered something that was here long before the questions we bring to it, and will go on in some form, asking its own patient version of how to be alive in warm water, in light, in relationship with everything around it. The reef does not resolve into meaning. It simply continues. Quiet, ancient, indifferent to observation. Going about the long work of building something remarkable out of very small acts, in the dark and the light both, in the night water and the day, as it always has. As it has, in some form, for longer than we have been here to wonder at it. And now we stop knowing and simply become. You have no weight here. There is no body to speak of, no fins, no shell, no skin to feel the warmth of it. Only the water and you moving through it. Only the light and you drifting inside it. The afternoon is still in the water. Not the bright midday white that reaches straight down through the surface, but the long amber of late afternoon, tilting in at an angle, painting the reef in a color that has no good name. Gold is too warm. Yellow is too simple. It is the color of water that has been holding sunlight all day and is only now beginning to let it go. You are at the edge of the reef, where the wall drops away into open water. Below, the structure descends. Coral towers and ridges and shelves, built over centuries, built over longer than centuries, stacked on the accumulated stone of everything that lived and calcified here before. The limestone beneath you is not rock in the ordinary sense. It is record. It is the patient residue of millions of small lives. You know this now, not as a fact, but as a feeling, the way you might feel the age of something old and quiet when you stand near it in the dark. The water is warm, exactly warm enough. Not a degree too hot, not a degree too cool. That precision is invisible, but you feel it as ease, as the particular comfort of a temperature that requires nothing of you. You drift inward toward the reef's body. The schools are still moving. A long ribbon of small silver fish turns in the middle water, and the turn is so coordinated it looks like one decision made by many minds at once. The light catches them as they angle, a flash, a dimming, a flash, and then they are past, continuing their slow collective orbit through the afternoon. You pass through the space they just occupied. The water there is still moving gently from their passage. Closer to the coral, the neighborhood is busy in the way of late afternoons everywhere. There is a quality of finishing to it. Parrotfish are still grazing, their beaked mouths working at the coral surface, their movements methodical, unhurried, but purposeful in the way of animals who know the light will not last. The sand below them drifts with what they have passed through, fine pale particles settling like slow breath. You have spent time with these fish before. You know what this means, this grazing, this sand. It settles around you now as something already understood. A cleaning station is still open. You recognize it without needing to think about it. The particular hovering of a larger fish above a coral head, slightly tilted, patient, and the small cleaner wrasser moving over it with the unhurried attention of a creature that knows it will not be eaten. The arrangement is old. Older than memory, older than observation. It is simply how things work here, and both animals know it, and you drift past it the way you drift past something familiar and good. The light is changing, not dramatically, not in a way that announces itself, but the angle has shifted slightly, and the shadows on the coral have grown longer, reaching into crevices that were lit an hour ago. Inside those crevices, something is already beginning to happen. There is movement in the dark parts of the reef that has no urgency to it, only readiness. Animals that spent the day folded into shadow are slowly beginning to stir. You drift lower along the slope of the reef. Here the coral forms a surface of extraordinary complexity. Branches and domes and plates and fans, each one a different shape, a different pace of growth, all of them built by the same process. Small, soft bodies secreting stone, slowly, over lifetimes. You are close enough now to see the texture of it, close enough to see that what looks like rock from a distance is, up close, something more intricate. The surfaces are not smooth. They are structured at every scale, all the way down to the tiny cups where the polyps live, withdrawn now in the light, waiting for dark. They will extend to night. You know this. When the light is gone, they will open and feed, their tentacles reaching into the water the way flowers reach toward light, except that it is the absence of light that opens them. That is the reef's rhythm. Not one rhythm, but many, layered over one another, running on different clocks, none of them requiring the others to stop. The water is very clear. You can see a long distance through it in every direction, the particular transparency that belongs to reefs, to water with just the right chemistry, just the right warmth, just the right absence of the things that would cloud it. This clarity is not nothing. It is everything. Without it, the light could not reach the coral. Without light, the zooxanthellae inside the coral tissue could not work. Without that partnership, the coral could not build. The whole structure beneath you, the whole world you are moving through, depends on this transparency, on this specific quality of emptiness in the water. The light is dimming now, slowly. The schools of silver fish have moved into deeper water or into the shelter of coral overhangs. The parrotfish have found their places. You know they find places, that they settle into the reef's crevices at night, that some of them surround themselves with a mucus cocoon, a thin, transparent envelope against the dark. You do not see this happening, but somewhere nearby it is. The reef is shifting registers. The daytime crowd is thinning, not fleeing. There is nothing urgent in it, simply withdrawing, settling, folding into the reef's structure the way a city quiets after evening without ever fully stopping. The same place, beginning to become a different version of itself. You drift along the top of a coral ridge. Below the ridge, in the shadow, something moves. Slow and lateral, a creature that spent the day still is beginning to think about motion. You do not disturb it. You are only presence here, only attention, and attention disturbs nothing. The creature moves again, a small deliberate movement, testing the changed quality of the water, the changed quality of the light. The color of the water is deepening. The amber is gone now. What remains is something closer to blue, a rich, darkening blue that is not darkness yet, but is the color just before darkness, the color of the last usable light. The coral surfaces that were warm-toned an hour ago are now cooler, more neutral, the way all colors become more neutral when the light that defined them begins to leave. You settle lower in the water. There is no settling, not exactly. You have no weight, no body to let down into rest. But there is a quality of descent to it, a moving closer to the reef surface, a slowing. The water around you is still warm. It will stay warm through the night. The reef does not cool the way land cools. The ocean holds its temperature with a patience that land cannot manage. Around you, the night shift is beginning. It happens without announcement. A hawkfish that spent the afternoon perched on a coral branch has disappeared into deeper shadow. In its place, something else is moving through the space, a different kind of attentiveness, a different pace. The nocturnal hunters do not hurry. They have the whole night, and the coral itself is beginning to open. Not visibly, not in any way you could watch in real time. But the process has begun. The slow extension of polyp tissue, the reaching of tentacles into the dark water. The reef that looked like stone all afternoon is beginning, in the most patient possible way, to feed, to participate in the night in its own manner, which is the manner of something very small and very ancient that has been doing this for longer than the concept of night itself. The water is quieter now, not silent. The reef is never silent. There are always small sounds, the distant clicking of shrimp, the slow movement of water over stone, the settling of sand. But the quality of the sound has changed. It is less layered, less dense. The sounds that remain are the ones that belong to this hour, to this particular phase of the reef's long daily cycle. You drift. There is nothing else to call it. You are drifting through dark water above ancient stone, in a place where the temperature is exactly right, and the water is exactly clear, and the darkness is full of things going quietly about their lives in ways that have nothing to do with being observed. The coral branches around you are very still. The water moves through them slowly, a gentle current, the kind of movement that has no urgency, only direction. The branches do not bend. They are stone, but the water moves through them as if they were a forest, as if they were something that breathes, and in a sense they are. In a sense, they always have been. In a sense, the line between stone and living is not a line here, but a gradation, a slow becoming. You are very still. The reef continues around you, in the dark, patient and ancient, going about its long work. the polyps extending, the hunters moving, the sleepers settled into their crevices, the schools somewhere in the middle water, drifting in their own slow orbits. The sand still settling from the afternoon's grazing, still drifting down through the water column toward the floor. Nothing requires your attention. Nothing requires anything of you. You are simply here in the warm, dark water, in the middle of something that has been happening for a very long time and will go on happening, quietly, after this moment is over. The reef does not know you are here. It continues, patient, ancient, building its slow record in the dark, as it always has, as it has for longer than there were words for what it is. The water is still. You are still. The reef breathes in its own way, in the dark, in the warm, clear water, and you drift with it, and there is nothing else that needs to happen now. And after all that color, motion, and time, what remains is something very simple and very quiet. The reef is still there. It was there before this evening began, before any of these words, before the first light touched the water today. It will be there when the light returns tomorrow. That continuity is not a small thing. It is, in its way, the whole point. Tiny animals built this. Animals without eyes, without plans, without any awareness of what they were making together. They took what the water offered, the calcium, the warmth, the light, and they added to what was already there, one small act at a time. And over centuries, over millennia, the accumulation of all those small acts became something that can be seen from space, something that shelters thousands of species, something that has outlasted ice ages and rising seas and the slow drift of continents. That is what patience looks like at its longest scale. That is what belonging to a world can mean. You have drifted through that world tonight. You have moved through the warm water, past the branching coral and the sleeping fish, and the slow hunters and the polyps extending their quiet arms into the dark. You have been in a place where life has found every available surface, every crevice, every shaft of light, and made something of it, not because it was trying to, because that is simply what life does, given time and the right conditions. There is something restful in that. Let your jaw unclench now, if it has not already. Let your hands open, soft and still against whatever is beneath them. Your body is heavy in the way that bodies become heavy when they have finally stopped asking anything of themselves. There is nowhere to be. There is nothing required. The reef continues in the dark, far away, doing its slow and ancient work. And you are here still, in the warm and quiet dark of wherever you are. The reef does not need to be understood to be beautiful. It does not need to be visited, to matter. It exists, patient and intricate, in the same world you inhabit, the same ocean, the same planet, the same long story of life, finding ways to persist and shelter and grow alongside other life. You are part of that story too. Even here, even now, even in rest, especially in rest. Your eyes are heavy. Let them be heavy. The weight of them is easy. The weight of the whole body is easy. You are held, the way the water holds everything that drifts through it, without effort, without condition, without asking anything in return. The reef breathes in its way. You breathe in yours. The dark is full of living things, all of them continuing, all of them enough, all of them exactly where they are. Sleep well and good night.